What is the weirdest Tinder date that you've been on? Went on a date with this cute girl. We talked about an hour and she felt more fascinated when I brought up my cats. She was very eager to meet them, so we proceeded to go to my place. Spent few hours just playing with my cats. She was about to leave and before she put her shoes on to go, she says to me, "Oh, I forgot something," and went to grab my youngest kitten. During the time 4 months old, and picked him up and wanted to walk out with him. I stopped her and told her what was she doing. To her reply, "I thought you let me adopted him." Guy offered me a bag of marijuana at the beginning of the date. Then spent the rest of the evening talking about molecules and energies and how the government is trying to give us cancer because of something in the lights we use. Some weird pseudoscientific stuff. I just nodded along and ate my food. He didn't eat anything because he fasts 23 hours a day. The best part was that the woman at the table next to ours could hear our conversation and we exchanged knowing looks. Where her eyes said WTF is up with this guy? And mine said I know. Met a guy on Tinder. We talked for a while on FB before meeting. He decides to come to my work for my lunch break. I was working third shift at the time, so this was at like 3 AM. I hung out in his car in complete silence while he played on his phone. Then he started to show me pictures of real dead bodies on his phone. I hopped out of his car so fast. That was my first and last Tinder date. Showing you real dead bodies on his phone is odd. Showing you real dead bodies on his phone at 3 AM makes me glad you got out safely. I matched with a guy I went to high school with and who I always thought was really good looking and really cool. Played sports. Well liked by everyone. Etc. I probably hadn't seen him in 2 years at this point, but in his Tinder pictures he still looked the same. So we agreed to meet up for coffee. He comes in with greasy long hair, a beard, and actually looked homeless. And went on to tell me that he dropped out of college and has severe ADHD now. He couldn't focus on one thing and was fidgeting the entire date. Told me how he's now one with the earth. And at the end of it told me he was gay. I'm a girl. I seriously thought I was being punked. Guy attempted to put his hand up my skirt as a way of confirming that was how I had been assaulted on a train a few years prior. Edit to add context below. Because somehow a number of people are seeing this as my own fault. Partially because it would have been a turn off for the date in question. Him. Do you drive into work? Me. Yep. How about you? Him. Public transport. How come you don't take the train? Me. I'm not a fan of public transport, and besides, I have free parking at work, so it's win-win for me. Him. How come you don't like public transport? Me. A few years ago some douchebag stuck his hand up my skirt when I was getting off the train. So anyway. Him. Did he do it like this? He then proceeded to put his hand up my skirt while we were sitting down on a park bench. And got high enough to touch the gusset of my stockings. Guy kept asking me out for weeks and even called me. We had exchanged numbers eventually, to convince me. So I decided to give it a try. We decided to meet at a bar. He got there 30 minutes late and ordered a Coke. Apparently, he was a recovering alcoholic. That's not a problem for me. I just thought it was weird that he had agreed to go to a bar. And then, he proceeded to perform on me what felt like a job interview. At some point I even sarcastically asked, "Am I doing okay here?" Full stop. After 40 minutes of that, he got up, paid for his Coke and said, "I'm gonna go. I have to get up early tomorrow," and left. We haven't talked since. Well, did you get the job? Don't leave us hanging. The weirdest one was prob going out with this dentist guy. We were in a cafe. He then asked to see my teeth and questioned about my oral hygiene. I have pretty good teeth according to him, but that was weird. Strong teeth. Good for making necklaces with. I had been on a few dates with a guy I met on Tinder. And things seemed to be going really well. We had common interests. He was funny, smart, attractive and incredibly kind. One evening he invited me over to his house. We had always had public dates beforehand, and I agreed. The night started out great. He cooked dinner. We watched a movie. And things started to lead towards the bedroom. Before we got there, he asked if he could show me his favorite room in the house. Somewhat confused, I agreed. He opened a door beside his bedroom. And we walked into a baby nursery. Not just any nursery. A nursery with an adult-sized crib, changing table, diapers, etc. He told me that he was into baby role-playing and would be very happy if I would agree to be his mommy. I'm a very open-minded person, but that's not something I would be able to do for him, and politely excused myself. He messaged me the next day, asking if I would reconsider, and I once again politely told him that we could no longer see each other. Went to a local cafe. Date went well until she flipped the crazy switch. She started inquiring when we would get an apartment together, as well as have children. Also, how many children we would have. She ended up messaging every day, multiple times a day, wondering why I didn't want to talk to her. I ended up calling her and just telling her it wasn't going to work. She flipped and told me our relationship was built in lies and she was breaking up with me. We went on one date. Sorry for your loss. I noticed a cute French girl. In her bio she mentioned there were some tadpoles in a pothole by her house that she wanted to rescue. I never know what to start off with, so I figured this would be a good conversation starter. I ended up bringing a ladle, a spoon with holes in it, and we fished a few out of the pothole. Put them in a jar and brought them to a nearby pond. The rest of this first and last date was super awkward, but hey, at least we rescued some tadpoles. I picked up this one girl from her house and she fell asleep until we got to the restaurant. It was her way of showing she trusts you. I feel so immediately comfortable around you I can fall asleep. While talking before the date he explained that he doesn't drink or smoke or do any hard drugs. While on the date he tells me he is going to drop acid tomorrow. When I brought up what he previously said, he argued with me about how sugar is more of a drug than acid. Sure buddy. We were at a soccer game and he became aggressive and started making weird grunting noises. The worst part? I overheard the people behind us say, "Oh look, these two are on a first date. It's not going well. Do you see how uncomfortable she looks?" Hilarious now but painfully awkward at the time. Turns out she was just broke and really wanted a free meal. I found out almost instantly when she devoured almost every roll at Red Lobster in like 2 minutes. About 15 minutes and we were discussing travel and we'd both been to Amsterdam, and then he said this is probably more of a second date conversation, but when I was in Amsterdam 2 hookers blew me while my girlfriend waited in the room. I guess it was raining outside so his GF waited in the room. My sister went on a date when he was wearing clown shoes. Comically large red shoes. Agree to meet at her place, just your average Netflix and chill date. I was in my mid-20s and she was early 30s with 1 kid. Just gorgeous blue-eyed blonde. She lets me in the front door and there's about a 40-year-old man just sitting in a recliner and her son was just sitting on the couch and they were watching TV. She grabs my hands and takes me down to the basement. Obviously just anxiety to the fkin nines, like what is going on? That is her husband and she can just FCK who she wants apparently. So we go at it while her hubs and son watch TV. She was being obnoxiously loud. Great sex but super awkward, especially leaving. Made eye contact with the dude on the way out. He looked just dead in the eyes. Like a defeated look. Never went back. Not weirdest but most interesting for sure. Went on a date with a pretty good looking chick off of there. Everything went fine, then she had me over. We went to her room and instead of sex, we started talking about what we do and she dropped the bomb that she's a cam girl and does PRN for some pretty big companies. I specifically remember Naughty America being one of them. We spent the next like hour watching her get plowed and asking her questions about the behind the scenes of PRN. She was using Pix about a year ago. She had awesome text game. Found out she had a form of autism. She was much bigger. She was smoking cigs. and was dying of cancer. I tried to be nice for the rest of the night. She brought a stuffed shark. I'm fine with that. I understand the importance of comfort and therapy stuff. We talked in a cafe for a bit. We talked about past trauma. She talked in a loud voice. Very loudly discussing being molested, raped, etc etc. Alright. We all need someone to confide in. We all need someone to support us. But can you keep it down? Finished up at the cafe. Lightly. We ended up in the back of her car. Her with her stuffed shark. Me. Still chatting about some super deep stuff. Then she asked me, "Can you pay me?" I told her we could make out for a bit. But I really didn't feel comfortable. Just super awkward all around. I hope she finds happiness and comfort in the future. We went to a pond and looked for frogs and stuff. We saw beaver. It was great. Not traditional, but perfect for me. Worst date I went on hands down. A guy acted incredibly interested in me and I gave him a shot. Told me he didn't have any money for a date. Fine. We are in college. I get it. Proceeds to show up. I pay for him the whole time. Everything is going great. Asks to see me again. Next day. Doesn't even talk to me. Hope the free food was worth it. People who use Tinder for a free meal are the worst. No matter what their gender. I went on a date to a live music bar with someone I met on the app. The bar was in a sketchier part of the city. And we ended up getting jumped by a homeless guy. He started out by asking to show us card tricks. Cornered us. Commanded us to kiss each other. And then took all of our cash. It's definitely my weirdest first kiss story. We ended up being a little too freaked out to continue the date. Ended up climbing a tree at a nearby park and talking all night. Then decided to get some late night waffles. We now see each other all the time and I've actually never met anyone I'm so compatible with before. I think I need to read through these stories before a date. Posted this here before on a different account. But this story was fun, so here we go. Meet up with this guy at a local bar to get some beers and lunch. Date's going great so far. We're vibing pretty well. Joking around. And getting into conversations without the awkward small talk. Halfway through the date we're talking about things we daydream about. I told him about my dreams of being a musician. Then asked him about his. His eyes get really dark as he says, "I like to fantasize about the light leaving my enemy's eyes at my hands." At first I'll laugh because I think he's kidding. But he keeps a straight face. I clear my throat and don't know what to say. So all that comes out it. How do you do it? Without even a moment's hesitation he answers, "Harpoon." Yeah. There wasn't a second date after that, haha. Was he missing a leg? She spent the whole time making small comments about her weight. And how she was fat. She was definitely a bigger girl but was also extremely pretty. And I know how it is to feel insecure sometimes, so I don't hold it against anyone. But my lord, she would not shut up about it. The fact that she spent the whole day bringing it up left me drained. She probably thought you were out of her league, so she basically talked you out of being interested in her. Some people can't get out of their own way. About 10 minutes in she karate chopped a child and then spent the rest of the date holding her blouse closed because one of the buttons had come off. 2 years later we're about to buy a house together. Maybe not weirdest I guess, but just bad. We went to Olive Garden and the conversation just wasn't clicking. He looked a little different than his photos. The one thing that was weird, maybe it's just because no one I know does this, but he kept putting chapstick all over his hands. All night. Super weird to me. I'm awkward, so I'll attribute some of it to me. That was 5 years ago. Haven't spoken to him since that date and he just tried to add me on Snapchat a few weeks ago. I've put chapstick on my knuckles if my hands are super dry and I don't have any lotion. His girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend. Not quite sure what she was. He told me he was single. Unlocked his apartment door and walked in on us watching a movie on his couch after we met for dinner. She was not happy and started yelling and cursing. Are you f***ing kidding me? Dot. Super awkward. Dot. Especially when her dog she brought came over and started sniffing me. Open bracket. Luckily he took her outside and calmed her down. She stood about 50 feet away quietly on the sidewalk while I left shortly after. Told him he should probably get off that dating site so no one else has to go through the same awful situation he put me in. Was so stoked for a date I had with this very attractive girl. The conversation had been great so I wanted to spare no expense. Went out to a nice place. Food's good. Conversation is strong. She takes a picture of her dessert to post on Instagram and then shows me the post with the tagline when you're on a terrible date but the dessert is fleek. I cringed so hard. The chick went on for an hour about sloths. He said weirdest not best. First date after my ex and me broke up. I had spoken to her okay both Tinder and Snapchat for a couple of weeks until the date. I get to the date and she looks nothing like her profile pics or snaps. We have the date and she even asks me about profile pics and says I look more handsome IRL than on the pics. I however can't get myself to lie but neither do I want to hurt her feelings so I kinda just answer thank you without repaying the compliment. After the date I go in to give her a hug and she pulls me in to kiss me. After that I just hurried off. 10 minutes later she sends me a snap selfie and once again I'm dumbfounded because it just doesn't look like her. She had mastered the art of just the most perfect angle to look 10 times hotter in the photos than IRL. I matched this cute girl and had the usual boring hi how are you? I'm fine kind of intro. Barely a handful of messages into that. Without me hinting at anything sexual at all. She blurts out how about we just have sex? So I'm a bit taken aback because that never f***ing happens. But sure why not? That's why we're here right? So we set a time and she comes over. But is immediately uncomfortable and doesn't want me to touch her. Kiss her. Anything. She just sits down on my couch. Pulls a bag of oatmeal out of her purse. And asks me for a bowl of hot water and a spoon. I oblige. And watch awkwardly as she silently eats this oatmeal. Then gets up and leaves. I'm not sure if she even said goodbye or not. But she certainly didn't say anything more. I got catfished for a bowl of oatmeal. I've been on one Tinder date. She didn't look anything like the pics. She was much worse. We went to the mall and for ice cream and after that she took us to Toys R Us. She was just walking around looking at the toys. I'm not really a rude person so I stuck with it but it was just terrible. Uninstalled Tinder after that. Right before the date she asked me if I could pick her up. I told her I don't have a car. I'm from Europe and my city has good public transportation. So no need for a car. During the date she kept mentioning how cool it would be if you had a car and even tried telling me about car sharing services and how I should be using them. She also repeatedly asked me what I thought of her during and after the date. We never met again though. When I was a freshman in college I went on a coffee date with a guy who had lied about his age. He was 10 years older than I thought he was. Turned out he was an English teacher for high school seniors. I was essentially the same age as his students. Gross. An interesting sounding guy agreed to meet me in the sci-fi section of a Barnes & Noble. Good so far. He was running late. Fine. We meet up and he seems kinda shy and insecure. Fine. He's heard of none of the books I've read. Even the classics. And can't tell me anything that he likes other than semi-explicit manga. Not so good. We go to the cafe to talk and he insists I order some super sweet secret menu frappuccino. I pay, starting to feel a bit weird. We started to talk. He brings up, in turn, politics and video games. The rub, he basically quotes John Oliver and Markiplier, respectively. I tell him I've seen those shows. And ask about movies. And says he doesn't really watch them. Trying to avoid a walk home in the rain. I ask about family. He shrugs it off. At that point, it was so awkward that I left. Better to endure a stroll in the rain than so much strange unoriginal mediocrity.